And I didn't ask Trump for a bilateral because we are negotiating. I think what he did was an insult to Brazil. He knows that. That's why I said he still acts like an emperor. We are making an agreement, Mauro Vieira, and my Minister of Commerce is dealing with his Minister of Commerce. We are negotiating. I handed him a document on organized crime to show that our federal police is prepared to face organized crime. I told him that if he wants to fight organized crime, Brazil is very willing, including him, since they are the ones exporting smuggled weapons to Brazil. All the weapons that the federal police seizes in Brazil come from Miami. And that the state of Delaware in the United States launders money for Brazilian criminals. I handed it over in writing because I don't want to just talk. Because President Trump, he talks a lot and listens very little. Now, don't meddle in Brazil's elections, because Brazil's elections are Brazil's problem. Just like the American elections are their problem, not mine. So the only thing I want is the same respect for Brazil that I have for the United States. That's all.
Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva has issued a direct warning to US President Donald Trump, asking him not to interfere in Brazil's electoral process. Speaking in Geneva after attending the G7 summit as a guest nation, Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva responded to recent remarks from Donald Trump regarding Eduardo Bolsonaro, the son of former Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro. Lula said Trump is free to support the Bolsonaro family personally, but must respect Brazil's democratic sovereignty and stay out of its elections. According to Brazil's Supreme Court, Eduardo Bolsonaro allegedly sought US political backing linked to legal proceedings involving his father, including pressure campaigns and potential sanctions against Brazilian authorities. Lula added that if any leader needs to understand fair electoral conduct, it is Trump himself, emphasizing the importance of mutual respect between nations. During a brief encounter at the summit, Lula said he handed Trump a written document outlining connections between organized crime networks operating in Brazil and the United States, suggesting closer cooperation. Lula concluded by stressing that Brazil expects equal respect in return, warning against violations of international diplomatic norms as tensions between Brasilia and Washington continue to rise. Lula reiterated that Brazil will defend its electoral sovereignty firmly, while remaining open to dialogue and cooperation with the United States on security, trade, and crime prevention efforts moving forward.
And I didn't ask Trump for a bilateral because we are negotiating. I think what he did was an insult to Brazil. He knows that. That's why I said he still acts like an emperor. We are making an agreement, Mauro Vieira, and my Minister of Commerce is dealing with his Minister of Commerce. We are negotiating. I handed him a document on organized crime to show that our federal police is prepared to face organized crime. I told him that if he wants to fight organized crime, Brazil is very willing, including him, since they are the ones exporting smuggled weapons to Brazil. All the weapons that the federal police seizes in Brazil come from Miami. And that the state of Delaware in the United States launders money for Brazilian criminals. I handed it over in writing because I don't want to just talk. Because President Trump, he talks a lot and listens very little.
Brasil falando das eleições no Brasil. Ele disse o seguinte: o país é pouco
So if there is anyone who has to learn from civilized elections in Brazil, it is my friend Trump. Next time I'm going to bring an electronic voting machine to show him how it works. Okay, and the electronic voting machine is so reliable.
Mas eu preciso fazer. Primeiro eu queria sua avaliação da cúpula quanto ao que foi.
I just hope that he doesn't violate the code of ethics between nations that want their sovereignty respected. I just hope that. As far as I'm concerned, he can keep liking Bolsonaro, the father, the son, the grandson, there's no problem. That's his problem. After all, there's no accounting for taste. Now, don't meddle in Brazil's elections, because Brazil's elections are Brazil's problem. Just like the American elections are their problem, not mine. So the only thing I want is the same respect for Brazil that I have for the United States. That's all.
From the very first tweet by President Trump, from the first tweet, which is a statement contrary to what democracy and civility require, which is that one president calls the other, or one president sends an official letter to the other. I first learned about the taxation through Twitter, and the taxation substantiated based on untruths, because the trade deficit that the United States claims to have with Brazil is actually what Brazil has against them. Therefore, if anyone had to impose a tariff, it would be Brazil against the United States and not the United States against Brazil. Okay? What did we do? We did not make threats. We did not make speeches. We decided to build a narrative to try to show not only to the United States, but to show other countries and the American people, because there were some articles in the Washington Post, there were some articles of mine in the New York Times, to try to talk to the American people, showing the folly, of the punishment to Brazil. I had already said it, and I will say it to you and to President Trump. This Marco Rubio does not like Latin America, and much less Brazil. He is a frustrated Latin American. I do not know if he was born in Cuba. It seems he was not even born in Cuba, but he is the son of people who were born in Cuba. So his behavior regarding Latin America, and I hope our Senate, Jacques Wagner, responds to this. He said yesterday in the Senate that he is very happy because they are managing to make Latin America, with the exception of Brazil, with the exception of Nicaragua, with the exception of Cuba, and with the exception of Colombia, making Latin America very close to the United States. He doesn't know that we already know that before this move of theirs, this country was the victim of a coup in 1964. And at that time, it was orchestrated by American ambassadors in Brazil. We know that. So it is important that they know that we know our history. It is important that they know that we do not want war. It is important that they know we want to build the true narrative of a relationship that has already lasted 201 years, which is therefore a new relationship, and that we want to strengthen our institutional relationship with the United States. At the last meeting where I was with the Minister of Justice, the Minister of Development, the Minister with the Minister of the Economy, with the Minister of Agriculture, with the Minister of Industry and Commerce, and we had a conversation with Trump, 3 hours long, during which I handed over the documents on the issues that Brazil wants to discuss. In the trade area, though, there was a disagreement between my Minister of Industry and Commerce, my Minister of Foreign Affairs, and their Secretary of Commerce. And I proposed to Trump, since there is no agreement between the two ministers, let us give them 30 days to reach an understanding. If Brazil is wrong, I know how to back down. But if you are wrong, you back down. This meeting has not concluded anything yet. That is why we were surprised by the decision to issue another statement, another tariff regarding Brazil. Afterwards, I handed 4 documents to President Trump, stating the issues we would like to discuss with him, obviously. 4 subjects, from the fight against drug trafficking and organized crime. A document was delivered. From the trade issue, a document was handed over. The agreement we had made with Iran in 2010, Brazil and Turkey, regarding uranium enrichment, which is better than what they did. I also gave to Trump, the document is here. I also handed over our report on rare earth issues and critical minerals. All of this was handed over with the excuse that I told him, I will give you the document, because often we have a conversation, we forget, and often your aides take the document from your hand. So I will personally hand you the 4 documents. Take them home and read them. Before bed, read these documents as they are very important for the relationship with Brazil. I left there convinced that we were establishing a new logic in the democratic and civilized relationship between Brazil and the United States. And I confess to you that I was taken by surprise yesterday by their decision and the day before yesterday. And what is even sadder is that there are Brazilians whose names I will not mention here, Brazilians fueling this fight with the perspective that if he taxes us, he will harm a candidacy for the presidency of the Republic. You know, that such an imbecile does not realize that the one who is harmed is the people, not Lula. In other words, asking for a punishment against the country with the goal of defeating a candidacy or gaining an advantage is such rudeness that I cannot find another name for it other than to say in any other country in the world, at any other moment in history, this would be called treason. That would be called treason. That is what they did. There is no explanation in sociology for the behavior of a group of irresponsible people like these. And we are very calm. Everyone knows I always say I do not want war with the United States. I do not want war with China. I do not want war with Bolivia. I do not want war with Uruguay. I do not even want war with the Seychelles Islands. What I want is to prove that we can only live in peace if we strengthen democracy, if we strengthen multilateralism, and if we treat the relationship between heads of state with responsibility. I will repeat something here that I said the first time I received the tweet from President Trump. Trump was elected by the American people. And I respect the American election result. I was elected by the Brazilian people, and they must respect the vote of the Brazilian people. I was not elected. I was not elected emperor of Latin America, and much less was Trump elected emperor of the world. What I hope for, and have been pleading for some time now, is that the 5 members of the UN Security Council, which are England, France, Russia, China, and the United States, for which the Security Council was created, the permanent members, to maintain peace on planet Earth, that they have the capacity to meet and discuss what their role is, whether it is to maintain peace or to foment war. After all, the wars that are happening are unilateral decisions. No one asks anyone to wage war. Countries decide and they do it, and we want peace. We want progress. We want development. We want to improve the quality of life for the Brazilian people, and that is what we will do until the end.